32 years ago today, a vote nearly gave the entire Bay Area to the A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans. Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about your Oakland A's all year long in this, the final year in Oakland. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows what's really happening? I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth full season as a member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where I am. Check me out right there. I am the host of Locked On MLB, where I come out with 5 brand new podcasts a week all year long for Major League Baseball, all season long about Major League Baseball. And now I'm doing double duty. I'm doing 5 more episodes a week for the Oakland A's here on Locked On A's. That's right. If you enjoy what I'm doing, you get 10 of me a week. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you are listening to us every day, use that hashtag. Don't do it over the other lower third, Sully. Put on that hashtag Everyday A's. It actually helps us. It gives an idea who is listening and for how long. This episode is brought to you today by our good friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You know, I was not originally going to do a show today for Locked On A's. I did one on Sunday, and I did one that dropped on Monday. And I felt like, well, there's no game going on Monday, so I'm going to leave it blank, and then I'm going to do, you're going to get your 5 episodes. But then I went to one of my favorite sites, which is This Day in Baseball History, usually to get an idea of a famous person who may have been born today, maybe a famous death or a big event in baseball history. And the one that popped up for the 3rd day of June caught my eye. And it was an event that I remembered. And so let me just pull it up right here. You can't see my screen, but it says the event that was going on says, where did it go here? Here it is. San Jose voters tell the Giants they don't want them by rejecting a plan to build a new stadium in their town. Then the Astros added insult to history by swatting the ball every which way in a 12-6 drubbing at Candlestick Park. And I remembered that. That was a big event. I was keeping very close tabs on what was happening to the San Francisco Giants. And what was happening to the Giants then is so eerily similar to what's happening to the A's now. Both teams were playing in ballparks that they've been wanting to get out of for literally decades. Both teams have had recent success, but couldn't draw. We're saying that maybe this market couldn't support 2 teams. They desperately wanted to stay and were willing to throw everything but the kitchen sink at them. And I was going back, and when I was prepping this podcast, I read a couple of articles that came out then that were written in 1992 with the following assumptions. The vote was dead. The Giants are going to move. There's no way to build to have them play in Candlestick, and there's no way a new ballpark's going to be built. And let's start looking at other places. And there are some startling, like this is a part of an article I grabbed from the San Jose Mercury News from June 4th, 1992. It says that Giants owner Bob Lurie says the Giants won't play at Candlestick beyond the expiration of their lease in 1994. So there are just 2 more years left there. And there was a proposal led by San Francisco supervisor. And by the way, with that, a supervisor is basically like a city alderman or a city representative. That's what they're called in San Francisco. Harvey Milk famously was a San Francisco supervisor. Angela Aliotto was trying to propose they build a ballpark at 7th and Townsend, which, by the way, is only about 4 blocks from where Oracle Park was eventually built. But it required using taxpayer money, which got shot down. They kept putting it on a ballot, and it kept getting shot down. It looked like they were going to win when they put it on a ballot in '89, as interest in the Giants was shooting through the roof. But then the earthquake happened just before Game 3 of the World Series, and suddenly the idea of allocating money to a new ballpark for the Giants when there was still a lot to be repaired in the city just seemed really nasty. I remember I was in high school in 1989, and I remember seeing the renderings of, oh, wow, that'd be a really cool downtown park. Nope. And Aliotto was saying, like, losing the Giants would be like losing the opera, the ballet, and the symphony. Well, San Francisco was out. They can't play in Candlestick. The city of San Francisco doesn't want them, and they had to look elsewhere. Now, this is when the A's famously handed the rights over to San Jose to the Giants for the purpose of building this park. But the votes did not go their way. And, I'm reading this article from June 3, 1992. This is from the Associated Press. Measure G, which asked San Jose voters to spend general funds to build a stadium, was opposed by about 55% of those who put in their ballot. It wasn't popular then. It's not popular now to spend public money on a stadium for billionaires. The owner, Bob Lurie, says, when I bought the Giants 17 years ago, one of the main things in my mind was to make sure they did not leave the Bay Area. And the cost of the stadium would have been $265 million. Sounds pretty cheap right now. But lo and behold, there were groups like Citizens Against Stadium Taxes, which mirrors what's happening in Las Vegas, of the teachers against public money. But this was, the vote was clear that the Giants' chances of staying in the Bay Area were gone. They were dead when they couldn't get the votes to have them play in a new ballpark near China Basin, and now San Jose was dead as well. And the thing about it became very clear that it was, where will they play? And some cities were bandied about. Washington, remember, Washington didn't have a baseball team at the time, and Baltimore had that entire region. But Washington had a stadium, albeit a lousy one, just sitting there. At the time, it was the home of the RFK Stadium was the home of the Washington Redskins. That's what they were called then. But it was a multi-purpose stadium, and the Giants could become the Washington Giants. That's not what they're aiming for. They wanted to go to St. Petersburg. They wanted to go play in the stadium that was built in the mid-'80s to lure a major league team. It was first built to lure the White Sox. And then when they did expansion, they passed over Tampa Bay and gave it to Miami, where they created the Florida Marlins. Well, now the Giants had their eyes on Tropicana, or at the time it was called the Suncoast Dome. And believe it or not, one of the biggest obstacles the Giants would have had to have overcome would have been the fact that the American League would have fought another Florida team being a National League team, because Florida at the time was considered a gold mine, that whatever team is put in the state of Florida was just it was like hitting the jackpot in the lottery. Remember the movie Major League? The plot was the owner of the Cleveland Indians, that's what they were called then, was threatening to move the team to Miami. Miami was the gold standard of where you wanted to put a baseball team, and Tampa Bay wasn't that far behind. This is the universe that we lived in. At that time, the Marlins hadn't played their first game yet, But the thought was if the Giants had moved, suddenly there would be 2 National League teams in Florida. But they probably would have worked around that. Now, the thing that happened, and I remember my late father was a diehard Giants fan. And I remember because he was a Giants fan growing up outside of New York, and then we moved to the Bay Area, and he was a huge Giants fan. And he just was shaking his head saying, they left me once, and now they're leaving me again. It was clear. It was as clear then as it is clear now for us that the Giants were gone. In fact, they were starting to hold rallies in Tampa Bay and printing out Tampa Bay Giants jerseys and saying baseball has arrived in Tampa Bay. And there was a sense of resignation because remember at the time, not only were the Giants having trouble filling up the dump, but the A's were in the middle of this great run. They had won 3 straight pennants and narrowly missed making it 4 trips to the World Series out of 5 years when they lost the Roberto Alomar Toronto Blue Jays ALCS. What does this have to do with the A's? I'll tell you what it does. This vote nearly opened up a reality where the A's would not only stay in Oakland, but they would essentially become a big market franchise. Hey, let's talk about our friends at Game Time. I know it's not hard to get tickets for A's games, but do you know what? You want to make sure you're getting the right seat, don't you? You want to make sure you're getting the right vantage point, right? You want to know all the details of where you're going to be sitting. I have my favorite place to sit, which is not field level, not upper deck, but one of the middle decks, where I'm behind home plate, a little bit on the first base line. And when you use Game Time, you get a great view of your seat and you can pick exactly where you want to be. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from the seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Now, you get the last-minute deals. Sometimes you're like, hey, am I going to go or not? That happens a lot for A's fans. Well, you can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, not just A's tickets, comedy, theater, all sorts of events, concerts. You get all-in prices. You have the price that you pay has no hidden fees. It's a beautiful thing. I mentioned the seat view. Say that 3 times fast. You get a panoramic view from the seat. That's where I want to sit. And the purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Now, take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. Do what they are? They are guaranteed. Hey, where is your hub for baseball, football, hockey, basketball, all of the best takes you can have? What you need to do, you need to make this switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed to bring you the biggest sports stories out there. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. So here's the deal. The A's could have been the great benefactor of this vote. That's one of the great ironies of what happened. There's one other huge irony, which our friend Gravity Fallout Pines is going to point out, but I'm going to get to that in a bit. By handing the rights to San Jose to the Giants in a way that's not done with any of the other markets that have 2 teams, Chicago, and does not carve up the region with the White Sox and the Cubs, neither do the Mets and the Yankees, neither do the Dodgers and the Angels. Although there is a little bit of distance that the Angels have to have from Los Angeles, but they set up shop near Disneyland, so I don't think that's much of an issue. But handing the South Bay and essentially Silicon Valley to the Giants seemed a gracious gesture, or it could have been Machiavellian, because they could have known that San Jose, which now is a beaming city made of gold, it's Kitane. Dune fans will understand that reference. But at the time, it was basically a glorified suburb. And the San Jose Sharks were just beginning to show up there. But as I made the joke before, the only thing most people knew was the Dionne Warwick song, which was about someone who couldn't find San Jose. But the thought process may have been the Giants, if they can't get San Francisco and they can't get San Jose, they're gone. And imagine what that would have done for the A's. Imagine what that would have done, because this was still the A's of Rickey Henderson. Now, they had traded away Canseco. They still had McGuire, Eckersley. They still had Dave Stewart. They were still coming off a trip to the postseason where they were this close to making it to another World Series. They were still a marquee franchise. And suddenly they'd have the Bay to themselves. Suddenly they would have the San Francisco Bay all to their lonesome. And the A's were drawing well at the time. They were not playing to an empty house. And the Oakland Coliseum was actually kind of a nice place to see a baseball game. But if you take a look at the A's in 1992, the A's in 1992, that year drew nearly 2.5 million fans, which was the fourth highest attendance in the American League. Previous year, they drew 2.7. The year they won the pennant in 1990, they nearly drew 3 million. They drew 2.6 in 89 when they won the World Series, and the first of the World Series years, they drew 2 million. So they were a popular team, filling out the joint. And if you had looked up and said, whoa, you have the whole Bay to yourself now. Then, had the Raiders wanted to come back and show up and ruin the Coliseum, which is a topic for later this week, they wouldn't necessarily have that leverage over the A's. The A's would be a big market team. The whole region to themselves, we haven't seen that since 1967. We haven't seen the Bay Area where there's only one team. The whole time since the arrival of the A's for the 1968 season in Oakland, there's been one of the two teams has been wanting out. Starting from when the Giants were rumbling and Charlie Finley was rumbling in the 70s, right until this moment right now, where the A's are still in Oakland. It would have been over. And trying to find that money, trying to build a stadium, especially when you saw that the stadium revolution was beginning. Camden Yards was just opening up that year in 1992, and people were flocking to Baltimore to see a team that wasn't very good because they wanted to see the stadium. And a couple of years later, we saw the same thing happen in Cleveland, who legendarily played in see if this sounds familiar, a stadium that was better suited for football, that was always empty, that didn't have any of the amenities, and that they were constantly looking for other places to move to. They were this close to becoming the New Orleans Indians. They almost became the Seattle Indians at one point. Does that sound familiar? Big football stadium, always empty. Then they opened what was at the time called Jacobs Field, and then you couldn't get a ticket. And maybe if the A's were alone in the Bay Area, there were no Giants, there were no McGowan, there was no Bonds. The investors that would have showed up for the San Francisco Giants would have been there for the A's, and maybe they would have built the equivalent of Oracle Park, or maybe they would have built a new baseball stadium right there in the parking lot of the Coliseum that had an old-timey feel, and suddenly people would go to that. In 1992, if you had said that the Giants would have overwhelming popularity where they were filling out the joint every night like they have been for years and years and years, you would have thought you were living in an alternate universe. And it was about to happen. Measure G failed. They couldn't build a stadium in San Francisco. And then they couldn't build a stadium in San Jose. And Lurie was, I'm done. I'm out. There are lots of other cities that could have taken him. And 2 that were ready. And 1 that looked like they had an agreement. And the A's would have been a big market team. And Crazy Fallout Times has given me the crazy fact of the day. John Fisher was part of the 1992 Giants ownership that kept the Giants in the Bay and built Pac Bell Park. Reality can sometimes be very strange and very aggravating. Let's talk to our friends at FanDuel. This is a fabulous time to be a sports fan because you've got the NBA finals are starting in just a couple of days. Boston versus Dallas. You don't have the double Dallas going on because Edmonton is going to be playing Florida. Well, you know what? I have to admit, I am going to root for Edmonton. I couldn't tell you a single player on the Edmonton Oilers, but I'd like to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup, and maybe I'll put some money on that. And if I do, I am going to go to FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win. Maybe not the cup, but you got a win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet it on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. This is a quick reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. Well, look, at the A's didn't play today, but it was a frustrating day for A's fans today for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Angels won. But the main thing I want the A's to do is keep far away from the Angels, keep the Angels in last place and make a run at the Astros. Well, the Padres jumped out to an early 1-0 lead. And I thought, okay, here we go. All right. And the Padres wound up dropping the game. Meanwhile, the Cardinals wet the bed big time against the Astros. The Cardinals were up 3-0. And I thought, okay, here we go. And they took a 4-3 lead into the 8th inning. And yikes, Cardinals, you're not doing what I asked you to do, which is to hold on and beat the freaking Astros like I asked you to. And in that 8th inning, Bregman homers, Diaz homers, Altuve gets the RBI double, and next thing you know, a 4-3 Cardinal lead is a 7-4 Astros victory. So the A's didn't hold them off today on their off day. And alas, who's coming into town starting today? The A's are going to be playing the leading Mariners. And we're going to see what happens. Today we have Kirby is pitching for Seattle. Spence is going for the A's. So we're going to give it a shot. So, all right, there's your history lesson for the day. We'll see how it goes. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Lamenting the moment when the A's nearly took over the Bay because San Jose voted nay. This has been Locked On A's. How many more rhymes can I do? What the hey? I'm yours, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.